Hello and what's up guys, Medium Guy here. Welcome to the next video in the video series dedicated to Caddy, and in this specific video we're going to learn about the layer 4 module that we can actually implement in our custom image of Caddy. So we can do a lot of crazy things with this module, so if you want to learn more, stick with me. So as you can see, I'm in the Caddy's documentation page for the layer 4 module, and here we can see the syntax how we can actually integrate this module with our Caddy server. So you can learn different things about this module, like different fields that we can pass configuring this module and things like that. So here I'll move to the GitHub repository for the same module, and right over here you can find a lot more detailed explanation of what this module is and what features it has and what things you can actually do using this module. So here you can see a list of matchers that we can actually pass to our configuration file. So like for example, we've got the HTTP matcher. So like for example, we can use this module in order to implement a layer 4 proxy in our Caddy server. Next, right over here, like we have the OpenVPN matcher, Postgres matcher. Like for example, we can configure our Caddy as a proxy to a Postgres instance, proxying the incoming requests to a Postgres database reachable by this Caddy server. So as a result, you won't expose your Postgres database directly to the internet or any other network that you might desire. And over here, the thing that we're going to do right in this video is to actually how to implement a SSH proxy using Caddy and using this exact module. So as a result, the SSH clients will be making their connections through our Caddy server that will eventually proxy the connections to an SSH server somewhere in the network, of course reachable by the Caddy server. So using this method, you can actually implement a proxy for your SSH server. And like for example, by any reason that you can't actually make requests directly to your SSH servers, you can actually configure your Caddy server using this module to be a proxy between you as the client and your SSH server that is somewhere up in the internet. So of course, if you want to learn a lot deeper into the features that this module has and all other stuff that you can do using this module, of course I recommend giving a visit to the README in this GitHub repository. So as a result, hopefully you will be able to configure things as you desire. So right over here, we can actually see how we can add this module to our already existing Caddy image. So using the xcaddy build and using the --with and providing it with the exact same address for this GitHub repository, we can actually compile our Caddy server again, adding this module on top of our Caddy server. So having all this in mind, I'll move to VS Code right over here, where I've got all my files and configurations, which I'll actually put in my own GitHub repository, and for which you can find the relevant link down in the description section of this video if you want to follow along and use the same configurations that I use. So right over here, as you can see, I've got a Docker Compose file in order to set up and start my Caddy server as a Docker container. So right over here you can see that I've got only one service, which is of course the Caddy server itself, and I'm using a custom compiled version of the Caddy server's image. So let's first move to the Docker file right over here. As you can see, I'm using the Caddy's builder Alpine image as my builder image, and using the exact same command that we just saw in the GitHub repository, I'm actually building my own version of the Caddy server that will eventually hold this module also inside itself. So right over here, using the official Caddy image as my base image and copying the built Caddy binary file from the builder image to this exact image right over here. So I'll move back to the Docker Compose file right over here, and this image name is exactly the same name that I'm going to actually build my custom Docker image with, this exact same name. So we'll see that in a moment. So right over here, I'm passing the restart policy to let the Docker engine know that I want this container to be restarted by for any reason that it might get stopped, and by passing the environment variables and the TZ environment variable, I'm actually able to define the time zone of the container that will be created. And right over here on the port section, I'm actually mapping 3 different ports to inside the container, and actually these are the ports that I'll later configure my Caddy server to listen on these ports for different kinds of connections. So lastly, right over here, I've got the volume section that I'm actually trying to map my Caddy file to inside the container in order to hold my custom configuration file. So later that the Caddy server will be initially coming up, we'll use this exact Caddyfile to initially configure itself. And lastly, right over here, I'm actually persisting the /data and /config directories inside the container, which are actually the directories that the Caddy server will use to store its data and any configurations that it might be creating. So before moving to the Caddyfile, I'll move to the terminal right over here. I'll hit ls to make sure I'm in the exact same directory that I've got all my configuration files, and by passing docker build -t in order to give my image a name and a tag. So I'll try to copy this exact same name from the docker compose file, and I'll pass it right over here, and I'll pass dot as the context for my docker build command. So actually by passing this command, Docker will try to actually pull all the dependencies and build your custom Caddy image, and when your image is built and ready, you can actually go ahead and create containers out of that exact image. So because I have already built this image, I'll hit Ctrl+C and will not try to run that command again. So I'll say docker images, and I'll grep L4, I'll hit enter. You can see that I've got the exact same image with the exact same tag. So now that I have my image, I'll move back to the VS Code right over here, and I'll try to move to the Caddyfile. So right over here, you can see that I've got my global block that I'm using the layer 4 directive, which is added by the compiling and implementing the layer 4 module inside my Caddy server image. So using this syntax, I can actually define which IP I want this layer 4 module to be bound to, and on which port I want this exact configuration to be listening on, which is exactly the same port that I mapped outside of the container in the Docker Compose file. So I'll try to define a matcher right over here, and I'll pass SSH as my matcher, exactly as we saw in the GitHub repository. So using the route subdirective of this layer 4 directive and passing in the SSH matcher, I can actually then use the proxy subdirective and passing my exact address of the SSH server that I want to be proxied behind my Caddy server. And lastly, right over here, I've got a simple configuration that I'm telling the Caddy to listen on port 80 and 443. And right over here, I've got a simple handle directive that is actually responding with some static content with a status code of 200. So I'll move to the terminal right over here. I'll try to say docker compose op-d, and as I'm expecting, my container with a network should be created. And right now, if I say docker compose ps, I should be able to see that my container is up and running with the exact same ports mapped to inside the container. So I'll say docker compose logs -f to follow the logs, and --tail 100 to grab the latest 100 lines of the outputted logs of this exact container that is created by this docker compose file. So I'll hit enter, and as I can see, things are looking good. And right now I should be able to make SSH connections to the address of the machine that is actually running this container and on the exact port that we defined in the Caddyfile. So using another terminal, I'll try to say SSH, I'll pass in the address of the machine that is actually running my Caddy server's container, and actually I'll provide a username, @ the address of the host machine, and by providing the -p, I am actually able to pass in the port of the SSH server, or to be exact, my layer 4 module that I configured in my Caddyfile. So right now I'm expecting if I hit enter, I should be able to actually make a SSH connection through the Caddy server to the SSH server that is proxied behind the Caddy server. So I'll hit enter, I'll hit yes to accept the fingerprints, and by providing the password for my SSH server, I'll hit enter, and I should be able to successfully log in to the SSH server behind the Caddy server. So I'll move back to the documentations right over here. Moving down, you can actually find some configuration examples that you can actually use for different purposes. So of course I recommend giving a visit to this documentation right over here in order to get more detailed about the things that you can actually do using this exact module. So that's all for this video. I hope you'll learn something new in this one, and if you have any questions, any recommendations, of course go ahead and ask me in the comment section down below. If you haven't watched the previous videos where you can learn cool stuff like the basics of reverse proxies and how to enable features like bot detections, external authentication servers, load balancing, rate limiting, and cool stuff like that. So if you're interested, you can find the relevant link for the whole playlist down in the description section of this video. So if you found the video useful, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel to help grow the channel and motivate me to create more free contents like this. So with that, that's all for this video, and I hope to see you in the next videos.